head of the United States Department of Agriculture stated that Trump administration is planning to have, quote, everyone receiving SNAP benefits reapply after a probe into the number of Republican-led states allegedly funding 186,000 cases of fraud. Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins alleged that the fraud was running rampant around the Embattlement Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, claiming that 186,000 deceased men and women and children in this country are receiving a check in 29 red states alone. Quote, can you imagine when we get our hands on the blue state data, what we're going to find? It's going to give us a platform and a trajectory to fundamentally rebuild this program, have everyone reapply for their benefits, make sure that everyone that's making a taxpayer-funded benefit through SNAP or food stamps, that they literally are vulnerable and they can't survive without it. The Agriculture Secretary did not state how or when people would have to reapply for their benefits. Quote, Secretary Rollins wants to ensure that fraud, waste, and incessant abuse of SNAP benefits ends. Quote, using standard recertification process for households is a part of that work, as well as ongoing analysis of state data, further regulatory work, and improved collaborations with states. State SNAP administration already requires those receiving benefits to recertify their information as often as 6 months, with families expecting to keep their income and personal information up to date. Despite the regular recertification process, Rollins alleged that the program was, quote, corrupt, adding that 120 Americans had been recently arrested for committing SNAP fraud, a reference to last week's bust in Ohio. The case was a accumulation of 11 months of investigative work into 17,000 legal transactions that took place using SNAP benefits. Quote, these are the things that we're uncovering that for years no one has really ever dug into because the feds didn't have the system in place to do it, but we do now. The president has made this a priority. We will fix this program. Rollins stated that the crackdown comes after SNAP benefits were thrown into chaos after Trump administration ordered states not to make full food stamp payments for November as the government shutdown ended. SNAP serves nearly 42 million Americans, and the benefits costing the federal government roughly $100 billion in 2024 alone. Despite the turmoil caused by the shutdown, SNAP recipients are expected to get their full benefits come Monday.
And only on KCCI, I visited a supper club who continues to help feed the north side of Des Moines, just as it has for decades.
Every weekday at the corner of 8th and College in Des Moines.
Our community's hungry, so we're looking to feed them.
A tiny church kitchen reaches its capacity.
There's a real need, a real need.
The chefs here are not gourmet, they're volunteers, seasoning, sautéing, and serving dinner to people.
How are you guys?
Struggling.
How are you?
To make ends meet.
We do see people that come here because they need this. I was once one of those kids.
Michael Hatter now helps facilitate CFUM's supper club. He knows the struggle.
I normally come here almost every other day or every day.
That is Sierra Green's daily reality.
When they cut the food stamps off, oh, I was mad.
A working single mother of 8,
Mad.
waiting in line with her kids for a free meal.
Yes.
Once caught in the middle
Thank you.
of the longest government shutdown on record,
Not a lot of kids get the privilege to eat.
she still feels helpless.
We ain't got nothing to do with that, okay? People ain't got nothing to do with that.
The supper club normally feeds about 50 people. Recently, that number has doubled. Many of them are kids. 1 out of 8 people in Iowa are food insecure. The return of food stamps means continued challenges for the low-income working class.
Even though I got $1,300, I still had to spend money to put food in my house because that wasn't enough either.
Sierra knows she'll have to stretch meals for her family or find free meals like the one offered here Monday through Friday.
We're still here, we're still operating, we're still feeding people, and the need is never going to go away.
Hoping hard times
Not at all, not at all. We'll get through this.
will soon feel a little bit easier.
Even before the large pieces of the federal government shut down in October of 2025, the Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program, or SNAP, sometimes called Food Stamp Program, was in for some big changes. The tax spending and policy bill passed by Congress earlier this year expanded work requirements for SNAP, tightened eligibility rules, imposed new cost-sharing obligations on state, and made other changes to the program. The Congressional Budget Office has estimated that the changes will reduce federal spending on SNAP by $186.7 billion over the next decade. But with the 43-day shutdown created further challenges for the program, which helped nearly 42 million Americans put food on the table. While October benefits were paid in full and on time, November's payments got caught up in the tanglement of lawsuits, conflicting court rulings, and short-term state-level fixes. Moreover, the most comprehensive data source we have is the Census Bureau survey of income and program participation. Although its most recent data is from 2023, that year nearly 23 million SNAP recipients, or 65%, were adult, and 12.4 million, or 35%, were children. Non-Hispanic white people accounted for 44.2% of the adult SNAP recipients and 24.8% of child recipients in 2023. Nearly 27% of adult recipients and almost a third of child recipients, 32.3%, were Black. Hispanics, who can be of any race, accounted for 24.2% of adult recipients and 40.7% of the child recipients. The vast majority of both adults and child recipients were born in the United States, 81.1% and 96.9%, respectively. Among adult recipients, 54.1% had a high school diploma or less education, and despite the program's work requirements, 61% stated they had not been employed at all that year. The Census Bureau also looked at households where at least one person received SNAP benefits. More than 6 in 10 of these households, or 63.1%, reportedly having no children in 2023. Almost a third, or 32.7%, said they lived alone. Among all SNAP receiving households, 39% were in the South, the highest share of any region. Moreover, in May of 2025, the national average benefit was $188.45 per person and $350.89 per household. Amounts were considerably higher during the pandemic period, where Congress authorized extra benefits. At its peak in November of 2022, the average monthly benefit was $259.50 per person and $493.76 per household. The purchasing power of SNAP benefits held relatively steady for decades leading up to the Great Recession. The average per person monthly benefit in 2025 dollars ranged from $122 to $151 between 1979 and 2008. The inflation-adjusted value of the average benefit rose during the Great Recession and quite a bit during the pandemic era, peaking in 2021 at $252.96 monthly. However, those nationwide averages conceal a considerable amount of state-by-state variation. SNAP beneficiaries in New York received an average of $218.44 per person in May of 2025, while recipients in Minnesota got $158.45 on average. These rankings exclude Alaska, Hawaii, and the Virgin Islands and Guam, where there are different rules in place to reflect higher food costs in those places. This is the only thing that I can pretty much state at this moment in time, and I'm going to repeat the same things that I've said during live streams. At the end of the day, if you are a Democrat or Republican, none of these parties legitimately actually really care about your well-being. They just care about you living long enough so that you can vote for them and keep them directly in office, so that you can facilitate the means of their survival, of their lifestyles, of how it is that their kids are able to take trips, around the world, right? How a lot of these political officials can afford cars that you can only dream of, right? That you can only drive in GTA and many other types of games of that sort, maybe even VR, right? Again, a lot of these folks do not care directly about you, because you have to question, why on God's green earth would any of these folks decide that it would be within the American people's best interest, that they want to have whatever internal disagreement that they're having, that they want to push that all over to the American people? And the American people have to pay for what it is that they can't specifically agree directly on. Realistically, the American people should have nothing to do with this at all. And this should not have even have taken place at all, even if it did, right? Which of course it did. The SNAP benefits and the other programs directly out there should have kept running. They should have just kept going. So while all of this is going on like it normally does all the time, American people will not be caught up because, hey, there's separate money elsewhere where it's going to facilitate the means for the American people to still do what it is that they need to do, while the quote unquote government officials, the adults, aka the children, bicker amongst themselves, argue amongst themselves, and, finally get things hashed out and finalized, which, is a 50-50 even still. Because this government shutdown, again, it makes no sense. You have people who had to go to work not even being guaranteed a paycheck. And that's insane. That is 100% insane. And I'm pretty sure some of those people were threatened, right? By stating that, hey, if you don't, we understand that you're not getting paid, but if you don't show up to do your 8 or your 12 hours, we're going to have to sit up there and, just let you go and all this other, like, again, crazy stuff that should not have happened at all by way and due to the fact of the government. Things should not be happening. And the other video that I showed you directly within this one was the fact that in one of the other states there, you have a lot of people that have to go to these food pantries. They need, this type of money. And again, you will have some people to sit up there and say like, yo, well, why don't you do this? And why don't you have a lot of people that are on government assistance, food stamps and things of that nature, and they work, but they're still not making enough. They are barely scraping by. And then the next thing that people say, well, why don't you go back to school and get a further education? How are they going to go back to school if they can't afford it? Well, there's grants. Grants don't cover everything. They don't cover a long term. They cover short term. Again, for those out there that always want to come up with, some type of response, just don't. Just don't. This is obviously not an area of which that you know anything about. So just, stay out of this one. This one is not specifically for you. The other thing I'll state as well, too, is that those out there that are suffering and, they need food, this would be a great time and a great learning experience for both, I would say, you and your family to start doing some research on gardening. Again, it's not an instant fix. Stuff takes a long time to grow. You may even need some money directly in there, and that's something that a lot of people don't have. But the only thing that I'm saying is this is a great example of why it is that none of us should actually depend on the government, because the government does not care. You probably have some people out here that, went to a further extent that they didn't need to go, all because of the benefits or the fear of all of their benefits being pretty much shut down and not coming back. And now we have this whole other thing where anybody who is on stamps, they now have to reapply. Now, I'm not sure if they just did a purge, an instant purge of the system where like, all right, we're kicking everybody off so that way we can clear the field and now people can come back and reapply. Because the only thing that I'm thinking of is that it's going to make the job of I almost want to say the caseworkers, the people who basically pick up the calls and they receive the information, right? I feel as though that they're going to be inundated with a lot of calls. There's going to be a lot of people standing directly in line in order to get their stuff directly done. And that's going to bog the system down. You might even have some outages. But again, I don't know how they're going to do this. I don't know if it's going to be like a brownout situation or a blackout situation, however it is that they're going to do it. And the last thing I will sit up there and state is that I don't really believe that they're going to force everybody to reapply. I feel as though that if you are Black, you of course are going to have to reapply. You're going to have to re-show information, all of these things. But when it deals with other folks directly out there, you just don't know. Now, again, it's a possible chance that they could. It's possible, but very unlikely. The other thing is too as well is that they could very easily be like, all right, well, we're going to show how fair we are. We're going to show a few white folks directly on camera who got knocked out of the system and now they have to reapply. Like, they'll do stuff like that. They will sacrifice a few just to sit up there and say that they made their point. But realistically, they didn't. It's all smoke and mirrors. But anyways, before I, get off talking about something else completely different, let me know what you guys think about this video and everything that I stated in the comment description below. And as always, peace, love, and stay tuned for the next video.